Welcome back to the Great Connect podcast. I'm Carrie Allen, your host and founder of The Human Array. And today I am joined by Deb Krier, who is an amazing connection that I'm very excited to have on the podcast today. And let me just tell you that our pre-conversation was just enough to say this is going to be oh so much fun. And so let me share a little bit about Deb so that you can get to know her and jump into this conversation. So Deb is a seasoned entrepreneur, cancer advocate, and integrative cancer coach who founded tryingnottoDie.live to empower professionals facing cancer with community, resources, and real talk, which I think we're going to do plenty of today. A 3-time cancer survivor with more than 2 decades in communications, marketing, and public relations, she combines a business acumen, lived experience, and humor to help others stay strong, lead effectively, and thrive through life's toughest challenge. I mean, that just to me, I love everything about that, Deb.
Yay. Okay, we can end now. Okay.
Yay. You were successful.
Yes, yes.
I'm sure that just encapsulates everything, but that's what your bio says.
Mhm.
Now, what does Deb say? Who are you and why are you here?
Well, it's funny because you when you face life-threatening illnesses, right? You do think about, why am I here? I don't know. And it's funny because now things have changed. I mean, your perspective changes. Part of that just changes with age, right? I'm probably old enough to be your mother.
No.
But it's it's one of those things where I got hit with a sledgehammer and and could have crumbled.
Mhm.
And there are times where I'm still cranky, pissy, not a happy camper,
Yeah.
but you pick yourself up and you go on. You use the word before the program, Energizer bunny.
Yeah.
And that really is how people will say, that I have so much energy. And I tell them, well, you just don't see when I don't, right? My front facing person is this bubbly, bubbly, bubbly. Later on today, I will be taking a nap. And so, but it's all about, resilience.
Yeah.
And facing things and going, I am not going to let this stop me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Right. And to me, that's a little bit about health in a nutshell
Mm-hmm,
of
mm-hmm,
I am able to be this person when I'm interacting with somebody
mm-hmm.
because I have done the other health things, the taking
Right.
care of myself, the
Mm-hmm,
resting, the food, the
mm-hmm,
nutrition,
mm-hmm,
etc., off camera or
mm-hmm.
out of the
Right.
spotlight.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm,
that's why I
mm-hmm,
can show up
mm-hmm,
this way. I
mm-hmm.
love that. That's a really
Right.
such an important
Mm-hmm,
perspective.
mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And I love what you do. I was looking at your website. I listened to some of your podcasts and just thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be so much fun.
Well, I thank you. I really appreciate that. And it is my joy to be able to bring more people like you into the spotlight, to
Mm-hmm,
hear your story, to share it for others, because what you're doing and what you mentioned, right, is that I could have crumbled,
mm-hmm,
but instead I had the opportunity to be called up
mm-hmm.
into this next chapter. And that is supportive for people. And that lived experience, bringing that into real life. Tell us how you support people today based on your lived experience.
Sure. Well, it's my business coach's fault. And so, long story short, my first diagnosis was breast cancer. And eventually the diagnosis became stage 4. So, and stage 4 is not considered curable. Now I hit my 10-year mark. Yay! I know we partied without anything. The other cancers that I have actually all been new cancers. But so I decided, and this is one of the things that I tell people, and this is why I love your website, is when you're faced with something like this, you have to pick what you think is going to work for you. Now, I am older. I worked for an oncologist. I worked for the American Cancer Society. So I decided to go with the traditional approach to dealing with this. So I was going to do chemo, I was going to do surgery, and then I was going to do radiation. Well, my first chemo treatment almost killed me, as in the doctors were fighting over how fast I would die that day. And I remember thinking, excuse me, I get to vote.
Yeah.
And I ended up in septic shock, which about 75% of the time is fatal. But obviously the doctors knew what they were doing. Lots of icky nasty drugs, but they did that, a lot of surgeries. I was in the hospital for over 7 weeks, all sorts of things. Had a double mastectomy. I did not do reconstructive surgery, but I had a complication from that my doctors had never seen because I'm special. um and so I'm just going along, but the whole time I kept working, right? Because that gives your brain something to do. And so several years ago, I was talking to my business coach, and we're on Zoom, and she shakes her finger at me. I thought, oh dear, I've done something. And she said, you didn't go through everything you went through without using it to help others. And I said, but I don't want to be cancer girl. And she was insistent. And doctors would call me in to talk with students, they would call me in to talk with patients, all these things. I mean, I've just always done that.
Yeah.
So I finally thought, how can I help others?
Yeah.
So I started an initiative, and as you said, it's called Trying Not to Die.live. It is all about the fact that when we have something catastrophic happen, and sometimes just all the time, we get so caught up in trying to not die that we forget that we have to live. And maybe that's 5 hours, 5 days, 50. I mean, whatever it is, you've got to live in that time frame. And that's part of making your decisions as to what you're going to do with this, all of those things. And so it is, we do have an online community on Facebook. Everybody's welcome to join it. I promise, no gloomy doomy. And when there's a little gloomy doomy, people are very supportive. But we have inspiration, humor. Hello, yes, must laugh at all of this. And so we do a lot of that. And then, at my business coach, she again poked her finger at me. And earlier this year, I became an integrative cancer coach. And I work with executives and business owners who are told you have cancer, and they think, no, I don't have time for that. And more importantly, they don't want to tell anybody. But they still need help. And so that's what I do, is I help guide them through that.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh, where to start, Deb?
I know, I
Start.
know. Mhm.
Like there are so many gems that I want to dig into. One, yes to humor, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, this has been a really important part for me in
Mhm.
how we talk about health, that like,
Mhm.
can we all laugh about the
Mhm.
fact that I know what to do on this device when it makes
Yes.
weird noises,
Mhm.
but I have no idea what to do on this one.
Right. Yeah. Or we ignore it.
Oh, yeah, for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
going to ignore that, right? And you said
Mhm.
this a little bit
Mhm.
about, the sledgehammer
Mhm.
and these big catastrophic
Mhm.
moments. And
Right.
I heard something recently that was
Mhm.
like, humans only change when volcanoes erupt.
Right. Yeah. You're told, hey, you need to lose weight. You need to eat better. We all go, uh-huh.
Huh? Like,
Right.
I had a salad yesterday.
Mhm. Yeah. I didn't eat that second piece of cake. Mhm.
I drank water today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Right. Right. We don't talk about the 4 shots or
Yeah.
whatever else
Yeah.
it was that we
Or
consumed.
the
Mhm.
incredible stress at the
Yes.
job that
Right. Right.
I'm not doing
Mhm.
anything
Mhm.
about,
Right.
right?
And let's be honest, stress is one of the biggest things that affects our health, our physical health and our mental health. Folks, get rid of those toxic people in your life. Stop doom scrolling on Facebook and reading all of the ickiness in the world. You could scroll past it. You don't have to read it. You
I
can block those people,
I know.
and surround yourself with light and love and laughter.
Yes. 1,000%, right? I like to say that I like unsubscribed from
Mhm.
most of the world.
Mhm.
I pay
Right.
attention, like I know,
Mhm.
like just
Yeah,
to
we know
unsubscribe.
what's going on, but I don't need to know the nitty-gritty everyday details.
I can't make a change in the
Mhm.
world. I can't bring
Mhm.
goodness into the world if I am
Mhm.
stuck in the mud,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
I have
Mhm.
to be able to keep myself
Mhm.
out of it. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
that the sand pit or the
Mhm.
whatever isn't there.
Mhm.
It's just
Mhm.
how do I make sure that
Right.
I'm staying clean
Mhm.
so that I
Mhm.
can bring more goodness out into the
Mhm.
world? And you
Right.
are just a bright shining light in that way. And I love that you're able to then guide people through
Mhm,
some of these really
mhm.
hard moments.
Right, right. And it is about advocating for yourself. I mean, that is the most important thing. And I mentioned that I work for an oncologist. That was like 35 years ago. And I know, and he was a totally different type of doctor. Now I was office staff. I was not medical. I could probably be medical now, but I mean, he would tell patients 99% of this is in your head. If you think you're going to die, you will die. If you think you're going to live, you will live. Now, in some cases, somebody might have only lived 2 weeks,
Yeah.
several months, whatever. But it's like we were saying, how did they live during that time period? And he actually had patients who would choose not, and like I said, 35 years ago, they would choose not to have traditional treatment. And as long as he felt they were educated in their decision, he was perfectly fine with that. We had one woman, and I remember thinking she was old. She's probably my age now, right? But she said, no, I'm going to take that money and I'm going to spend it on an around the world cruise. And so we packaged up her medical records and sent them with her because then and now, if you die in a foreign country, it's really hard for your body, for your family to get your body back, right? So we wanted to make sure that she had everything that she needed. And for several months, we got postcards. This is 35 years ago, folks. So we got postcards and then they stopped. And we decided she had found an island and an island boy and no more postcards.
Yep.
But yeah, it's about making those decisions that are going to work for you. And now of course the nice thing is medicine has finally caught on to the fact that we need a combination, and so it is about you go, I went and had treatment this morning. I'm still in active treatment. I go, so yep, I went in, they poked me with needles earlier today. And and so I do that. But then there's meditation, there's nutrition, there's all of those things, which we should be doing anyway. But how do we add that in so that we're kind of balancing things back out?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely, right? I think about the wraparound care so
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
much for all
right.
of this
Mm-hmm,
that whatever, to your point,
mm-hmm,
whatever path you choose,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
when I think about holistic health,
mm-hmm.
it's all a part of it. It's
Right.
just a
It's the whole body. Mm-hmm,
whole thing,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right? Like there are all these
mm-hmm.
different slices to the
Right.
pie,
Mm-hmm,
and none of them are wrong. It's about
mm-hmm.
knowing that the whole pie
Right.
exists, first of
Mm-hmm,
all, and then
mm-hmm,
building it and
mm-hmm.
constructing it
Right.
as cherry or
Mm-hmm,
blueberry or raspberry or
mm-hmm,
peach, whichever,
mm-hmm,
or pecan, right? You need to choose how you want to build your
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
pie.
Right.
And that wraparound care
Mm-hmm,
is what feels
mm-hmm,
missing at
mm-hmm.
the moment,
Right. Mm-hmm.
all of this. Yeah.
Right. And it is so important that we have those things and then that we pay attention. Now I'll be honest, the nutritionist, after 10 years, I've been, like I said, been going through, the nutritionist finally met with me, and but what she told me I didn't like,
Yeah.
and because it was, we're going to throw some pills at this, and I kept saying, no, I don't think so. And so she prescribed these and they're sitting on my counter, and but I haven't had a chance to talk to my oncologist about it, because I'll be honest, she is kind of the boss of me, and but to say, okay, I don't just throw pills at stuff. Let's find out why there's a need for the pill, and maybe do something different. And of course the nutritionist meant well, God love her, right? Because she also sent me really good recipes and all sorts of fun stuff, right? But yeah, I am one of those that, let's stop and think about something first. And I did that with the decision to have chemo. It was, I was initially diagnosed stage 0. So I didn't even see an oncologist for several months. Had a couple biopsies, those came back negative. Everything was cruising right along, and then we decided, let's take some lymph nodes, and 8 of 12 lymph nodes were cancerous, which meant that the cancer had spread. So I went from stage 0 to stage 3, just right. And then several months later, I said, my rib on the bad side. So you got, the side that had the cancer. I said, my rib hurts. And so that's a really fun test. Yeah, and I made the mistake. I opened my eyes at the wrong time. Now you're numb. I mean, all this stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
And it came back as inconclusive. So my oncologist said, you know what, we're just going to call it stage 4. And in some of my medical records, it does say bone cancer. But there's never been anything, knock on wood, that has pertained to that. But that also gave her the flexibility to be able to do different types of treatments.
Mhm.
And that's the other thing is everything changes so fast. They're making all of these discoveries about all sorts of things. I saw something on Facebook. So, we do take that with a grain of salt, where they were talking about a whole new, and actually this is probably true because I believe it's one of our Nobel winners, has been researching immunotherapy. I didn't say that right. But that carries over into so many other things that there might actually be a cure for cancer in that. So you never know. And so, but folks, Dr. Google is not your friend. Only go to trusted resources.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I mean, you're like singing my song when you say
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
that. Yeah, there is a lot out there. And to your point, like Facebook and Instagram and all the social media
mm-hmm,
platforms can provoke interesting
mm-hmm.
thoughts. And then
Right.
it's what you do with those thoughts to
Mm-hmm,
say, okay, I want to
mm-hmm,
explore this a little bit further.
mm-hmm.
There's something in
Right.
there that
Mm-hmm,
speaks to
mm-hmm.
me.
Right.
How do
Mm-hmm,
I explore it further and deeper to
mm-hmm.
understand if it's relevant
Right. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and true or how it's based?
mm-hmm,
But um, you said something that around root cause.
mm-hmm,
Yes. So,
mm-hmm,
I feel like that this is one of the greatest challenges that is happening right now. We've talked about a couple different things. One, advocating for yourself,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
finding root causes,
mm-hmm,
the intensity of Google being a resource
mm-hmm.
for better, for worse, that
And
it's
now AI,
now.
no,
Oh,
it
yeah. Oh,
hallucinates.
yeah,
Mhm,
exactly. Yeah,
mhm,
it just straight up makes things up. So,
mhm,
like,
mhm,
you need to know that.
mhm,
But would you say in the time, especially since you
mhm,
worked in an oncologist
mhm,
office,
mhm,
right? And so much has shifted and changed
mhm,
in the medical world in
mhm.
particular, but are people asking more questions? Are
Yes.
we
Mhm,
getting more curious and
mhm.
inquisitive about like, but why and
Right, right.
how and
Mhm,
what's the plan?
mhm,
So I'm
mhm.
curious your
Right.
perspective on that.
Mhm. Well, you definitely are seeing more of that. And then it gets overwhelming, right? And so you kind of have to watch who you're asking and things like that. But it is, of course, the first thing, and this is fairly common, when you're told you have cancer, your brain goes, I mean, it shuts off, right? And in fact, when they finally said I had stage 3, I looked at my doctor and I said, I'm sorry, I don't have time for that. Literally. And she kind of looks at me and says, well, you need to make time. Um, and but and so then we don't know what to ask because heaven forbid we go to Google or our friends. I love my friends. I love my friends who say, Deb, my grandmother had cancer. And she died. Right? That's
I
always
know.
what you get is,
So
oh, they
helpful.
died.
Thank you.
Right. And you have an initial diagnosis. So my technical diagnosis is stage 4 triple positive metastatic breast cancer. Um, but I know people who have that exact same diagnosis. We could not be more different,
Yeah.
both and so you get that diagnosis. That is the only similarity. Your body, your mind, your soul will react differently to whatever you choose to do. And so just because grandma had cancer and did this and this and this does not mean that the same thing is going to happen. And I tell people, talk to your doctors. I was talking with someone who had her first couple rounds of chemo, extremely nauseated. And I told her, I said, have you told your doctor? Well, no, because everybody gets sick. And I said, you still need to tell your doctor because they might change the protocol. They might be able to give you something for it. All sorts of things. Now, I live in Georgia, so cannabis is a little shaky down here. But that might be something that for somebody to consider
Good
in
here.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and so and for nausea, that is something that works really pretty well. But yeah, don't just assume that because you've heard this is what happens. That's what's going to happen to you. I mean, I know people who have sailed through all of it, and you look at them and you're like, well, right. I was really sick. I almost died.
Yeah.
But God bless them, right? But yeah, it's different for everybody. And I think part of that too is because of the education that we're doing, exactly what you were saying. So we're thinking, okay, what do I need to change for my diet?
Yes.
How am I gonna do things just like, you should change your diet when you're told that you have high cholesterol.
Yeah.
Get rid of that red meat,
Yeah.
at least most of the time,
Yeah.
and go with a more vegan, more plant-based, more white meat, things like that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, research it, but make sure that you're researching correctly.
Yeah, yeah. I think each of these really challenging moments really presents an
Mm-hmm,
opportunity for us to learn our unique operating
mm-hmm,
system,
mm-hmm.
right?
Right, right.
That yes,
Mm-hmm,
there are all these things
mm-hmm,
that, we can call them
mm-hmm,
labels and
mm-hmm,
diagnoses, et cetera, that then
mm-hmm,
get applied to each
mm-hmm,
individual. But everything else
mm-hmm.
around that is unique and
Right.
different.
Mm-hmm,
Where you live,
mm-hmm,
your
mm-hmm,
color of your hair, like,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and
Right.
what food
Mm-hmm,
you like, what you
mm-hmm.
don't like, what your
Right,
body responds to, what
right.
it doesn't,
Mm-hmm,
right? And
mm-hmm,
that is the unique care
mm-hmm.
that is really
Right,
important
right.
on top of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Right.
Um,
And I know that your audience is a lot of millennials. And to be young and be diagnosed with a severe cancer diagnosis, it, that brings a totally different set of challenges. No matter what the diagnosis is, you need to think about, especially if you haven't yet had kids,
yeah,
what do you need to do if that's part of it? And so make sure that your doctors and your care team understand all of that. I fired several doctors through this process. Because one just did not understand my sense of humor, and another shook his finger at me, and he told me, "You don't talk." Oh, that went over well.
oh,
Yeah, you could tell, right?
yeah,
And then I turned into the petulant child when he finally stopped lecturing me. He said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, you told me not to talk."
good for you.
um, but yeah, make sure that your care team understands you and what you're going through. And because yeah, there are so many different things that go along with this.
Yeah.
You need to really be making sure that not only you're making the best decision for you, but they're going to honor those decisions.
Hmm. Hmm. That to me is the most understated,
Mm-hmm,
under
mm-hmm,
represented component of
mm-hmm.
the journey
Right.
that we take for
Mm-hmm,
granted. It comes back to the exact same
mm-hmm,
thing, right? Which is,
mm-hmm,
yes, they have
mm-hmm.
this alphabet soup at the end of
Right.
their
They've
name,
got the cookbook. Mhm,
but each of
mhm,
them is
mhm.
unique and different
Right.
too.
Mm-hmm,
How you work
mm-hmm.
together
Right.
is one of the most important
Mm-hmm,
components, which
mm-hmm,
you said in the very beginning
mm-hmm,
around your doctor saying this is
mm-hmm,
yours, this is
mm-hmm,
your decision to make each of
mm-hmm,
these
mm-hmm,
things. And I think about how um, we're asking more questions, and
mm-hmm,
yet I think we still are relying on the alphabet soup
mm-hmm.
to say
Right.
that they should be the best for
Yes. The
me.
white coats know everything. Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm,
exactly, right?
mm-hmm,
And how do I speak up for what
mm-hmm,
feels
mm-hmm.
true to me? And
Right.
also say, that's fine and wonderful
Mm-hmm,
that that's your perspective,
mm-hmm,
but I can also
mm-hmm,
find other
mm-hmm.
people. That
Right.
doesn't mean I'm
Mm-hmm,
wrong or you're
mm-hmm,
wrong.
mm-hmm,
Instead, I want to find somebody who I
mm-hmm.
can have that
Right. Mm-hmm,
dialogue and discussion that makes me
right.
feel
Mm-hmm,
good and
mm-hmm,
empowered.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
so
And there have been a couple of times, and I've never said this to my doctors, but I've thought it a couple of times. Oh, if only you could go through this.
yes.
Now, I have my own surgeon. I have had, if I've counted right, in the last 10 years, 35 surgical procedures. And some of them were major, like one was 7.5 hours long. He actually had to tap out and have somebody else come in and finish. But I have my own surgeon who I would walk on fire for. I love him dearly. Everybody who knows him goes, right. They all, um, but he and I, he's done at least 6 major surgeries for me. But he was my second surgeon. My first surgeon I fired,
Mm,
and he saved my life. I mean, that first surgeon saved my life,
yeah.
but he didn't get me. He didn't understand me. And he was more excited about the fact that he could write a really good paper based on his care of me than taking care of me. And I'm like, yeah, there are some surgeons who just, there's some doctors really who have no bedside manner. But yeah, I love my surgeon, and he and I joke. I mean, and I've been there so long, his staff kind of is alarmed. So my second cancer was basal cell carcinoma, which sounds horrible and awful. Basic skin cancer. And right. And I am a freckly redheaded kid who grew up in the mountains of Colorado. It's
Yeah.
amazing that I got to this age without having skin cancer. And so, that was easy peasy to treat. But my third cancer was thyroid cancer.
Mm.
And it is a totally new cancer. But we caught it very, very early. And so aside from removing my thyroid, no treatment, but my surgeon, God bless him, he tells me, we'll put the incision, and it's about a 4-inch incision. We'll put the incision in one of the wrinkles in your neck so it won't show. And I went, thanks. I think I was like, and then when
take that as a good thing.
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm old and have these wrinkles, right? But and then I told him, at a follow-up appointment, I get hoarse. They did unfortunately damage my vocal cords when they did that. And I told him, I said, I get hoarse. And he looks at me and he says, well, you just talk too much. His staff went, oh. And I said, oh, get over yourselves. I've been here longer than any of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I mentioned that I had treatment today. I try and make my medical team laugh, right?
Yeah.
Because they have really, really hard, icky jobs. And so, what is your name and date of birth? Now, I never do this to a new person because it would totally freak them out. I tell them I'm Anastasia Beaverhausen. And in the infusion room, they do that. And so, but they've decided I'm Princess Anastasia Beaverhausen. And so I walk in for treatment today and they go, Anastasia! I'm like, hello. And other patients just kind of look. And I told them, I've been here longer than any of you.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, right? I tell them I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. I've been doing this. It's all going.
Yeah.
And
But
I think what you're saying is like humanizing the fact, this experience, right? That they
yes.
are humans, I'm a human.
Right.
Like, yes, this is a thing that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
but if I'm going to come
Mm-hmm.
here this often for this long, I
Yes.
should be building
Mm-hmm.
relationships in
Mm-hmm.
this experience because we're linking arms. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what's
Right.
happening.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, some of these doctors I have had for 10 years, and will have until either they quit or I move.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And that should be normal, that
mhm.
then they do know you,
Right.
they know you
Mhm,
inside and
mhm.
out, right? That at
Right.
this
Right.
point
Mhm,
that they are friends and
mhm.
family.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
ultimately,
Oh
that's
yeah. I mean, I know about their kids, all this stuff. And they also know that when they say, how are you doing? I will not say fine. To me, that's a 4-letter word that starts with F.
yeah.
And so I say hunky dory. I'm hunky dory. Now, if I don't say that, they know there's a problem. But yeah, we know these people, we've been associated with them for a long time. But even my short-term doctors,
Yeah.
they either got to get on my parade or I get somebody different.
Well, why would I sign up for a
Mhm,
service that I
mhm.
don't enjoy?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds weird to say this. They are our, and
Yeah.
this is the truth, folks, they are our employees. They work for us. Now, granted, they might be paid by the insurance company, but they work for us.
Yes. As we were having this conversation, just the small switch that I was contemplating in my head of, it's so often when you come up on one of these experiences, it's go get second opinions, a third
Mhm,
opinion,
mhm.
multiple opinions.
Right.
If we switched that one word and we said,
Mhm,
instead of going and getting other opinions on
mhm.
the situation, you're interviewing people.
Yes. Mhm.
Because to your point,
Right.
I'm about to
Mhm,
hire you
mhm,
for this really
mhm,
important job.
mhm,
And sometimes it's a matter
mhm.
of life and death. And
Right.
I want the
Mhm,
best person for the
mhm,
job. But the
mhm,
best person for me is different than the best
mhm.
person for somebody else, just
Right.
like at every
Mhm,
company, right?
mhm, mhm,
And so how can we switch that and
mhm.
say,
Oh, I
okay,
love that. Mhm,
empower ourselves to say,
mhm,
okay, this is coming up.
mhm,
I have a really important job I have to hire
mhm.
for. I'm going to go interview a bunch of
Right.
candidates
Mhm,
and decide which
mhm,
one is the best
mhm,
fit right now because it
mhm.
could change and it's
Yes.
okay
Mhm,
that it
mhm,
changes.
mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I love that concept. I love the idea that we're going to interview them. Because yeah, that is what it is. And maybe you see them once or twice, maybe you see them many times over many years. But yeah, how are you going to do that? And like I said, I had that one doctor that shook his finger at me, and it was so funny. He was a GI, so gastroenterologist, so stomach stuff. Um, I had been to the ER. I know I had gallstones because I had an ultrasound, but they said you got to go to a GI, and so I go to this guy. And now part of the complication from everything is about half of my digestive tract is gone. So I have all these issues anyway. And then, here I have this cranky gallbladder. And so, I go into this guy, never seen him before, and he walks in and I start now. I mean, you can tell, they walk in, they say hi, and I go, right. Um, and so I start telling him my sad tale of woe. And that's when he shook his finger at me and said, you need to just listen. And so he goes through what 99.9% of the time would have been an accurate thing to say for somebody who potentially had gallstones.
Yeah.
And a big part of that was we don't want to immediately do surgery. Let's see if we can do things with diet. I mean, this was not a bad thing, but I let him get through that whole thing. And then after I stopped being the 12-year-old who was annoyed, I told him, I said, you clearly did not look at my chart,
Yeah.
because 2 weeks ago I was in the emergency room. I had an ultrasound. I know I have gallstones.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
said, and more importantly, I've lost half my digestive tract, yada, 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 yada. And it kind of brought him up short. And he said, well, let's still make some changes in your diet. Let's see what happens. Come back in a month. And I went, sure. I made the appointment. I call my surgeon, right? I go in, I see him. He looks at my chart. He goes, what you doing Monday? I said, get my gallbladder out. He said, yeah. And, so I get my gallbladder out. I go back to that first doctor, and he comes and he says, how you doing? I said, I am hunky dory. And I said, I feel really good. And he said, I told you that if you made those changes, this would happen. And I said, I told you you should read somebody's chart before you come in, because I had my gallbladder out. And I got up and I walked out. And, it was like, and now I get our doctors are overworked. They are stressed. They are told you have 10 minutes with every patient, but they still need to make the best use of that time. So you glance at a chart, you have somebody, you've got staff, have them look at it, take whatever, but don't ever walk in. And I don't care, what type of medical practitioner you are, or if you are a massage therapist or a nutritionist, you need to refresh your memory by looking back at those notes.
1,000%. Yes, all of that, and yes, and more, and
Mm-hmm.
emphasize. And I am, I am a unique person, and
Mm-hmm.
just because you do this day
Mm-hmm.
in and day out doesn't
Right.
mean
Mm-hmm.
that you don't get to know
Mm-hmm.
me to be able to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what
Right.
I mean, to me, that's the fundamental flaw in the
Mm-hmm.
system.
Mm-hmm.
Generalizing it,
Right. Mm-hmm.
not everybody,
Mm-hmm.
certainly,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the fundamental flaw
Mm-hmm.
is, ooh, we checked this box, and
Mm-hmm.
so therefore this box equals
Right.
this over
Mm-hmm.
here. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole
Mm-hmm.
list of
Mm-hmm.
options just because this
So
box
many.
is checked,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to look at the other
Mm-hmm.
boxes that are
Mm-hmm.
checked. And
Right.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Right. And I've done some of the other things, like I did do genetic testing, because my grandmother had breast cancer. And so more than anything, I just wanted to see for the other people in my family, hey, is this something you should be concerned about? And I don't have any of those genes, so that was good. But like when my thyroid cancer appeared, my endocrinologist, I have bingo, right? I have people who's, I have Dr. Bingo. Um, my endocrinologist, who I love, he he was talking to me, and he said, did you have radiation? And I'd seen him for something else and then went back to him for this. And I said, yeah. And of course, when they do radiation for breast cancer, they do your neck. I mean, it's just part of that wide swath that they're zapping. And my aunt had thyroid cancer. And he looked at me and he said, I'm sorry. We should have caught this sooner. And so that's part of that too, is it's our job to make sure that we're telling people everything. Did I tell him I had radiation? I don't remember. But yeah, just make sure that you're kind of, and it all ties together. The nutrition, everything. If you're telling him I'm not sleeping well, I told my oncologist several months ago, I'm just so tired. And part of that is the treatments. I mean, that's just part of it. But she said, let's do a full blood, and I always get blood, or give blood. And I always get blood work every 3 weeks. She said, let's do a total full panel. And I said, okay, fine. And and so a couple of days later they call. That's always bad when they call, right? And she said, well, your B12 is way off.
Yeah.
And I said, that wasn't anything I ever thought about. And she said, it's 89. I said, oh, I mean, to me, that's,
Yeah.
right. And she said, it should be 500. She said, I've never seen it this low. I said, don't you remember I'm special? And so got to give myself B12 shots for a while. But yeah, it was, but yeah, I told them I'm tired. And I just seem to be more tired than usual. And again, they work for you.
Right.
So, don't expect them to ask those questions.
Right. And to the point of then advocating for yourself, because and making sure you have the right care team, right? And that you are expressing enough,
Right.
because if you don't, then you saying I'm tired, and not having somebody who's going to listen to you, they would say, that is just the treatments.
Right.
Right. And that may be the end of the story.
Right.
Whereas somebody who you've interviewed, you've said is the best for this job, I want them because I know they're going to answer the questions that I surface. That's a key component of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And be honest. We kind of jokingly mentioned cannabis, right? A lot of people might not want to tell them that they're doing that. And it is quasi legal here in Georgia. And so you can get cannabis for extreme nausea, because sometimes that is the only thing that works, or pain. And I did ask my oncologist. I said, not that I want it, but I'm curious. And as a practice, they decided no, they will not prescribe it, because especially in a state like ours, there's no regulation. They don't know how it will interact with treatments. But if, say, you've traveled, you've gotten some gummies or something, you need to tell them, hey, this is, I have added this to what I'm doing. Same with vitamins, all of that. I mean, they need to know all of what's going on with you in order to come up with the best possible treatment plan.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that for me, that just comes right back to the initial interview and creating your care team that really gets and understands you, so that when you share, you feel safe sharing that.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, they're not going to turn me in.
Yeah. You feel safe. I mean, I've even not felt safe sharing supplements or vitamins because judgment or whatever came back to me. And it's like, okay, well, you're not a good fit for me if you're not going to hear how I live and how I work, right? Or what's important to me. So having that right care team is really important.
Right. Yeah. My endocrinologist one time asked me, she said, I had a substitute endocrinologist in the end. So she was talking a little bit more just to get, more detail, right? And she said, do you drink? And the way she put it, I was like, oh, and so I said, why? And because I was thinking, okay, yeah, I mean, I was just, I was complaining about a tremor. My left hand has a tremor. And so I don't know why I even told her about it. I was just like, yeah, I got this weird thing going on. And then she said, do you drink? And I'm thinking, she's thinking I'm drinking so much that I've got the shakes. Right. And she said, we don't know why, but associated with thyroid disease, there's something in alcohol. And if you drink it, it helps with the tremor. I was like, cool. And she said, now I'm not telling you to have, and she said red wine for some reason, when, white wine doesn't do it. So it's something in the red several times a week will help with that tremor. I just thought, and I'm like, I've had a prescription for wine. This is the coolest thing in the world. But yeah, and of course a lot of doctors now, and this is always a good thing. Do you feel safe at home? How is your mental aspect? Yeah. Don't lie, folks. It's whatever it is, be honest with them. And they can't always do something about it, but sometimes it helps you just to be able to say, yeah, I don't, I'm struggling.
Yeah. That's a really hard one to, I have a personal stress burnout story. And I remember as I navigated kind of the physical that came out of that, I remember one doctor, and it's funny to me at this point, but she was like, how stressed are you? Are you
Oh,
stressed? And I was like, I'm not stressed. What are you talking about?
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, and now I look back and I'm like, oh, she actually asked me the question. That probably
Mm-hmm.
pushed me in the direction I needed to go one way or
Mm-hmm.
another. It just took me a long time,
Right.
and I
Mm-hmm.
really rejected it in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but it was really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So it is about cultivating that
Mm-hmm.
place of safety, so
Right.
you
Mm-hmm.
can say those
Mm-hmm.
things
Mm-hmm.
with somebody that is going to honor and respect
Right.
and hold the right
Right.
space for you. Yeah.
And if there's something more, then you need to figure it out. Years ago, I am a klutz. I am a klutz. And I was doing yard work. Long story short, I did something and this handle ricocheted across my face. And yeah, and I went down, right? And my husband's there. He's like, oh my God, oh my God. And I said, I think I need to go to the urgent care. So we go trotting off down to urgent care. And it looked like somebody hit me with a baseball bat, right? Because it went from the top of my left eye across my nose down my cheek on my right side.
Yeah.
And 4 different people came in and said, how did you do this? And by the third one, it finally dawned on me they were making sure that my husband hadn't done it. Right. Now, the weird part was he was in there the whole time. Right. But I'm sure what they were doing was they also observed, did he answer? Did I look to him for the answer? I mean, all those things. And finally, by the 4th person, I heard them go out in the hall and say, it's okay. She did this to herself. But yeah, they just and I've been at the doctors before where I have heard other patients, because HIPAA doesn't always exist, right? Other patients talking about not feeling safe. And I asked my doctor, one of my doctors, after I had overheard that, and she said, I hate hearing that. She said, because legally I can't do anything. She said, if they were a minor, yes. She said, it is my legal obligation to do something. She said, but this is an adult woman. And she said, and I'm treating her for kidney disease. I mean, and she said, I hope she just felt heard and honored. And maybe she will do something about it. But yeah, and I felt really bad. And that doctor, God bless her, I see her every 3 months because I do have kidney disease from all of this. And she told me one time, she said, you have to be my last patient of the day. I'm like, do I talk that much? And I just, I throw your schedule. I really did think that's what it was. And she said, no, you make me laugh and I need you to end my day.
Oh.
Right. And so I always make sure that I'm, when I'm in there. But yeah, but how can we laugh? How can we make this funnier? And because it is serious, right? My expiration date has probably changed. I don't know. But yeah,
It didn't come with this operating manual I
I
just did. So
know, I
I don't
know.
know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's, I have other tattoos, but that's not what's tattooed. And so I don't know what that is. But yeah, can I make people laugh? When I did reconstructive surgery, or when I had my double mastectomy, I chose to not do reconstructive surgery. I'm old. I don't need those. But I do have prosthetics. And so it's the funniest thing in the world, because me being me, they are named.
Yes. Yeah.
So I have 2 pair. I have the fancy pair the insurance bought that I don't like. They're Thelma and Louise. And the ones that I like that I wear are Lucy and Ethel.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those were the only I didn't have any other female buddy names, but yeah, and so I have people who will come up and say, Lucy and Ethel? Because I tell people, yeah, if it's a really important meeting, if I have shoes and boobs on, you know, and and I mean, you have to have fun with it, and you have to have fun when people ask maybe inappropriate questions. I mean, like I had somebody that said, "So, are you still doing that cancer thing?" And I said, "Yeah, it's going to kill me at some point."
They're like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and, but
Neat.
yeah.
Neat.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, it comes back to your website and
mm-hmm,
everything that you do is
mm-hmm,
like we're living here.
mm-hmm, right.
In the mindset
Mm-hmm,
of living
mm-hmm,
the best life that we
mm-hmm,
can with
mm-hmm.
whatever we have, no matter
Yes.
what.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's life then,
Yeah,
rather
yeah,
than
yeah.
waiting for that.
Right. Give yourself the grace when you have bad days and honor that, because it is bad. I mean,
Feel the feels. Yeah.
yeah. And so have those feels, acknowledge those feels, but don't get stuck in
Yeah.
those feels.
I think of that stuff as like we're bodies of water,
Mm-hmm,
literally,
mm-hmm,
and as long as we allow that
mm-hmm,
vibration to pass through
mm-hmm.
our body,
Right.
it doesn't get
Mm-hmm,
stuck. But when
mm-hmm,
you try to not have
mm-hmm,
it and
mm-hmm.
block it,
Right. Then it dams up. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and that's when you get stuck in it
mm-hmm,
and you
mm-hmm.
can't have that joyful and
Right.
that laugh and
Right.
the
Mm-hmm,
laugh at the TV show because you're
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
stuck in that
Right.
that negativity that we
Mm-hmm.
didn't let
Right.
pass. Yeah.
And if you need, especially mental counseling, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to ask for that, right? And and maybe it's through a minister, maybe it's through whoever, or maybe it is a psychologist or somebody. It's okay to say I need help.
Yeah.
Doesn't make you any less of a person to say I'm struggling.
I think it actually makes you the
It
strongest person.
does. It does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Deb, this has been amazing. I have like 5 other questions that I'm like, we're gonna have to like find another time to chat because
Oh
there's a
no.
whole other like arm of this that I wanted to go down, and we're gonna have to button that one up because it's
Yes.
too good to try and squeeze into.
Okay. Okay. I would love to chat again. This has been so much fun. And I'm very honored because, as I said, I love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. And to have you on to be able to share your story, to have you be a part of this that's then helping other
Mhm.
people, like that makes me so happy. So, anything last that you want to share with everybody before we wrap up? Any like
Yeah. I always tell people you are in charge, nobody else. And so make the decisions that will work best for you.
yes, so perfect. Well, we will be sure to link to all the ways that they can get in touch with you and more information about you, Deb. And so thank you so much for being here. Thank you. And thank you
Thank you.
everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Great Connect podcast. We'll see you next time.